Hey guys, it's Ted again with the video tip of the day. Today I was going to talk about closing ratios because you hear this question come up like, what should my closing ratio be on sales leads? It's not that simple, but first of all, let's define what a lead is, okay? In my book, because let's back up for a second. The reason why I have to define what a lead is because you get all these people all the time who are like, well, I had this customer, but I didn't close it, but that one doesn't count. That doesn't really count because it wasn't really a lead. So let's get a really good definition of what a lead is. A lead in my book is anytime you give someone a price on equipment or a change out or a replacement or something. If you give a price, it's a lead. If they ask for a price, it's a lead. So an example of that, the real obvious one is they called up and said, please come over and give me an estimate for a system. Clearly that's a lead. The ones that are a little less clear are the ones where you're got one of your guys or yourself, you're somebody, you're doing a service call or a tune-up or something on a system, and someone says, hey, how much is a new one anyway? And you say, oh, about 5K or whatever, and you throw some number at them. Well, you just ran a lead. Now, arguably, you didn't do a very good job of it, but you just did. You wasted it, probably, because you're not going to close it doing it that way, at least not very often. But first of all, we have to define a lead. It's any time there's a price asked for or a price given, it's a lead. Okay. So we're going to run two scenarios here just to kind of give you the parameters of what makes more sense on closing ratio, and it's not the ratio that matters, at least not only the ratio that matters. So it matters what your prices are, how much you're selling it for, and a lot of other stuff, so we're going to run through two things. We're going to do them both with 10 leads. So 10 leads are going to be the ones run. 10 leads, by the way, is a pretty small sample size. You actually want to run your data on bigger numbers than that, like 40, 50 leads at minimum to really know if you're doing well, because anybody can have a streak for a week or a slump for a week on 10 leads. But we're going to run 10 leads just because it keeps the math simple, okay? So over here, scenario A is a guy who is closing 70% of his 10 leads. He closed 7. He closed them for 5K. Okay, so 7 leads at 5K, that's $35,000 worth of sales off of 10 leads, so $3,500, per lead. Then we have equipment costs and labor to do this job. We're going to say that these jobs cost about $3,000 to do, a direct cost, because it's like the average job. I'm making some numbers up here that are pretty close. They may not be perfectly accurate, but $2,000 in equipment and roughly $1,000 in labor and materials and permits and stuff like that. So $3K to do the job, right? So I got $35K in sales, $21K. I make $14K in gross profit, and then of course we got overhead and everything has to come out of that after that. So that's how this one is running over here. If you close 70% at 5K. Now this guy's bragging, man, I got a 70% close rate. And everybody's like, wow, what a great salesperson. On this scenario over here, we got a guy close 40%. He closed 4 leads, but he did them at 9K. Okay, so he's got his pricing set differently. So he made 36,000, 35,000. It's not a lot different, but watch what happens on the back end. Okay, he's only got to buy 4 systems. He's only spending 12K. Remember, it's still 3K or so to do the job, right? Still, his labor cost didn't like quadruple or something like that, but he's only buying 4 systems from his supplier, and he's only buying 4 days of labor from his guys and stuff, so he's only spending 12 on it. He gets to keep 24. Over here, you keep 14. It's almost twice as much getting the pricing right and doing less work. What happens though, and of course, and it's a 40% close rate, so it's like everybody's like, well, that guy's not as good as this guy. What are you talking about? He's got more money. That's the way you keep score, right? So in the end, in this scenario, I'd rather have this scenario than this one. Because for one thing, I'm not working so hard. I don't need as many leads to make a profit. I only have to close 4 instead of 7. In both cases, though, we're going to go for 10. But I have more money to spend at the bottom to go get more leads. I have more money to spend on overhead, to buy trucks and fuel and insurance and office staff and software and everything else we have to run a business. I have more money left over here and then still profit, right? What happens though if the numbers are off? Like what happens if this guy sells 1 less or 1 more? If he sells 1 extra one, the numbers change and just start hitting it out of the park. If he sells 1 extra lead and goes from 40% to 50, this number goes from 36 to 45. This 12 goes to 15, but the 24 goes to 30 by selling 1 extra, okay? What happens if he slumps? What happens if, for whatever reason, this marketplace is not going to let him this week sell 40%? What if he loses one and sells 30%, sells one less job? Well, then he's got 27. He's got 9,000. He's still got 18. If he sells one less, he's still beating this guy. This is 18 versus 14. Still selling 3 versus 7. Okay. What happens on this guy if he goes up one? If he sells one extra job, instead of 35, it's 40, okay? Instead of 21, it's 24, and instead of 14, it's 16. He makes an extra 2K. So it doesn't do a whole lot more to sell one extra and get the closing rate to 80%. What happens if he has a slump and goes down by one, right? It's 30 instead of 35, it's 18 instead of 21, and it's 12 instead of 14. So there's a lot of work going on over here to make not very much change in the bottom line gross profit here. In the end, it's not as simple as what's my closing rate. It's my closing ratio versus also what am I selling the jobs at and what are my costs. You got to work these all the way through. So if you want to talk about your numbers, we'll have that conversation. I mean, I'm willing to do it. I do it all the time for people. Let's talk about your numbers and figure out what's going on with you and see if I can give you some help on how to understand and really get command of this. And so it's not, this is just the math part of things. I did a video the other day that was talking about how there's the math and there's all the psychology that in your own head behind how you sell it. I mean, yeah, how you sell something for 9K when everybody else is selling for 5. Well, what I forgot to mention is we're just saying this is a marketplace where everybody's selling them for 6. This guy here thinks I'll sell it for 5 and I'll crush the marketplace, right? I'm going to undercut everybody and I'll sell all the jobs. But he isn't making all that much money doing that. And he's working his little butt off to get all these jobs installed. This guy over here is, installing a few jobs and making a lot more money and having a much better life. The only difference is he has to value his stuff at a higher price. And if he's as good as he says he is, then he can do that. So it all comes down to the psychology of that. That's a different conversation. But again, if you want to talk about your numbers, let me know. Just comment below. I'm willing to help you out. And if you want to set up a call, you can do that. tedgravlin.com/booking. And it'll take you right to a spot. You can pick a time on my calendar. Otherwise, we'll talk soon.